Alrighty. Hey guys, welcome back to another commentary from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu national champion. Firstly, just before we begin, a huge thank you guys for the last video. We, for some reason, kind of exploded just a little bit by 40 people. I know that that's not the most, like 148 people is not the most subscribers in the world, but you know, I just feel like if I think about that in actual terms, you know, like 148 people coming into a lecture hall to hear me talk, that's a lot of people. So thank you so much, guys, for being subscribed. I really appreciate that. That's really cool. If you're enjoying the commentary, please leave a like and a follow and all the rest of it down below. Thank you so much, guys. I really enjoy that. I was just trying to get to 100 before, and now I guess I'm trying to get to 200. Sounds very cliched, because a lot of YouTubers do this, but I don't know, it's dopamine snacks and it's pretty cool. So, another Tainan video today. Mr. Dobra had his first no-gi match on Who's Number One, and I believe he did very well. So let's get into it. And so, you know, they're both pretty well the same. You know, like people treat 30 as if it's like old in jiu-jitsu, but it's really not. It's really not. You're not even physically peaked yet. When you're 30, it's like 30 to 35, that sort of thing. So you know, they're pretty well evenly matched. You know, same height, same weight, that sort of thing. And so I believe that Tainan's over here in the blue, and then what was, and then Troy is over here in the black. Now I'm just going to say Tainan and Troy because again, it's just going to be easier on my voice, and so we'll just get into it. So you know, Tainan looks ready. He's not really competed in no-gi, I believe, before. There's a 15-minute time limit match. You see already how they're like being quite aggressive. I feel like with this match, Troy really has something to prove because it's Tainan Dolpra, you know. And if you're going to beat Tainan Dolpra, it's going to be in no-gi, which theoretically he's less comfortable with. But again, I don't think that there's too much of a difference in your style nowadays between gi and no-gi. It doesn't have to be like people say there is. You just have to be good at grappling, you know. And you can see how like they allowed this engagement because you have to start grappling eventually. And so Troy goes for inside collar tie or inside club, and Tainan goes for outside collar tie. And you can see how Tainan was trying to off-balance Troy sideways. If I had to guess, that would be so he can use his left hand for like an ankle pick or inside leg trip, or like a, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like you wrap your leg around theirs as you sit forwards. And you can see how like they're playing. Yeah, nice. So Tainan's already into trying to get to the takedowns. You know, he's not messing around. In Australia, we have a saying is you're not here to fuck spiders, which means you're not here to mess around. I don't know where the saying comes from. Don't ask me. It's a bit weird, but he ain't here to fuck spiders, is he? He's here to win, you know. And so you can see how he went for the grip and now he's letting go because he sees an opportunity to potentially snap down and go for the legs. And he almost gets it. But Troy does this really good job of like sprawling out with his back leg as he moves away. And then they disengage, and you can see how like I talk about this with the biggins. Like with Gordon Ryan's a really good example where they kind of just like touch hands, like slowly touch hands together. The same thing's happening here where they're meeting hands because they have to start grappling at some point, right? They have to start grappling at some point. And so it's like a gentleman's agreement to maintain like a pseudo connection to start getting them into the fight, and then they can go from there. Because it's very hard to blast double leg with no connections. Like the only person that consistently does it was Buchecha, and there's only one of him, you know. And so you can see how they've got their forwards together, and then Troy goes in for the club in again, and it's and what Tainan were doing there. You see how he's like controlling the one hand, so he's taking a lot of points from Marcelo Garcia. Really, really good control over the wrist with like a double wrist wrap. Very difficult. And you can see how Tainan is like tugging that hand down, so he's using it as like a method to get Troy in close. And it seems to me like Troy's being very defensive here, and Tainan kind of has the momentum in the fight, especially mentally. He definitely has the momentum in this fight. And so just see what happens. So they're just playing this game where they're like looking for openings, opportunities, and so on and so forth, and they're both doing a good job of defending. I don't really see Troy going for very much offensive movement. Like, you can see how he's just being quite defensive. He's always backing away. He's like circling around and backing away and then backing away again. And I think he's like waiting for an opportunity to happen rather than doing what Tainan is doing and working for an opportunity to open. And to me, Tainan is a good example of what you should be doing in jiu-jitsu, right? Sorry, I got distracted. It looks like he has 6 fingers here because his like thumb is so long it looks like it's part of his fingers. And then it looks like his thumb is stuck out somewhere over here. So it looks like he has 6 fingers to me right now. Tainan's a really good example of what you should be doing with your jiu-jitsu. I can't unsee that now. That definitely looks like 6 fingers and his thumb is stuck out somewhere hidden. He's a good example of what you should be doing with your jiu-jitsu. Just like the rest of life, very rarely do you get opportunity without work. And yes, you can be defensive and hope things work out for you. And yes, sometimes that does work. But like, if you're against someone of the caliber of Tainan, the statistical likelihood that he's going to make a mistake, especially when he's fresh, is quite low. So you need to be more offensive with it. But I feel like, as I said before, Tainan has the upper hand in this match already, and he's my favorite to win just because of how I'm viewing the body language of Troy here. Troy seems to be very defensive. He seems to be very defensive, and he seems to be weary about engaging in case it goes wrong for him. Tainan is just engaging, and because of that, Tainan's going to have the opportunities because he's going to open the opportunities. Because of that, he's going to get to take advantage or have more goes at attacking, so he's more likely to pull something off, therefore he's more likely to win. And like so Troy started like I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at this. Because Troy is going to be really good, right? He'll be really good at jiu-jitsu. He'll probably be better than me, probably. But like, that was the most non-committal commitment I've ever seen in my fucking life. That was the most non-committal commitment ever. Yeah, honey, I'll marry you, maybe, sort of, potentially, maybe. He like shuffled around the side and fell over. The other thing that occurs to me is look at Tainan's body placement. I've been teaching my students. Sorry. It's like, come on, maybe give me a foot speed, please. I've been teaching my students that body positioning is everything. Like the hips are here, this leg is straight down, this leg is slightly bent down this way and forwards. The back goes up and in almost in a straight line, the shoulders come down and forwards, and then this arm is whizzering. Right? That's how this is working right now. And like the hips are rotated in. Okay? Tainan's, you can see Troy's face is getting smushed in here. So Tainan is like forcing his head forwards, and because he's so tight with this arm, you see how Troy is going for like a foot sweep or whatever. Look at his body positioning. You know, look at that body positioning, and he's trying to come around the corner to foot sweep. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen with this head placement. So Tainan's like, part of the reason why he's so good is not just because of his ability to perform techniques. I've been over this a little bit in this channel, is that it's not like all of these guys will be able to perform a knee cut pass just as good as each other. They'll all have their own variations and their own reasons for doing things because of their experiences. What separates the chaff from the grain, as it were, or however that saying goes, the wheat from the chaff, is the body positioning and the decision making. Tainan's body positioning, he set this up like a couple seconds ago in this attempt. So like Troy snaps in, Tainan opened up his shoulder, and this is where Tainan is setting this up, right? Watch. That tall elbow, in theory, says to Troy, I can get an underhook, I can go around the side, I can use this leg to sweep. But watch what Tainan does. He goes for it. Tainan is not trying to stop Troy heavy with the arm. Instead, he moves backwards. So he maintains this gap. This gap never changes its size. Watch. This gap closes somewhat, but Tainan opens it up again by moving away. He also rotates the corner. At the same time, he's placing his head on the cheek. So when Troy goes for, tries to go for this takedown, it just doesn't work for him, and then he ends up like, look at Tainan's posture. Look how perfectly straight that is, versus like this rotated off to the side, you know, and he's like rotated to the outside and he's like tilted off the top. So not only is he tilting forwards, he's rotating, you know, whereas Tainan is not. And part of the fundamentals of controlling someone or being strong is having like square hips, flat hips. Look at how flat Tainan's hips are. And so because of this, it ends up being like a little chuckle shuffle commitment from Troy, and then he just opens himself up to a counter throw because he's already so far forwards that Tainan just has to rotate in and then like Uchimata, you know, major inner thigh reap, and he almost gets him. The only thing that Tainan could have done a bit better here is like had this foot in closer or continued to hop, like hook here instead of just trying to lift. Hook and leave, and then hop sideways. So this foot goes to here, to here, to here, to here, and keep on dropping the shoulder down, and then eventually he would have got the takedown. But it was like a bit of a rude wake up call for Troy, I think. Ooh. 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 Oh, very beautiful jiu-jitsu. It was a bit of a rude wake-up call, and again, I think like that chuckle shuffle fuck around damaged something in here confidence-wise, and like improved something in here confidence-wise. And so you can see how Tainan's already like what he's doing with his fingers as he's like clawing them up and in. And so what happens is he like can disengage easily from the hand, and then he feints an engagement, claws his hands away, and then engages properly with this hand and immediately goes for an arm drag. And it's just a smooth motion, you see. boom. As soon as he has the arm drag as well, you notice how, like, he's not worried. What I really like about this, and this is maybe a lesson for me to learn as well, is, let me think about this. The way that a classical arm drag is taught is that you want the hand to be passing this side of your body. And then you want to be like pulling so that the person moves past you. What I teach my students all the time is move you, not the other person. Because if you're against someone huge, like 300 pound, 150 kg, you're never going to move them if you're Tainan's weight. Doesn't matter how good your technique is, strength plays a big part in it, you know. All technique is a force multiplier. You know, like and then force equals strength. Technique equals strength multiplied. So if you don't have that much strength as someone else's strength, so it's like someone's big, then it doesn't matter how good your technique is, their strength will beat your force multiplier, which is why you need to move you, not the other person, which is something that like Gordon Ryan does really well, because he started off at Tainan's weight, and he learned this type of movement and this type of idea, and then he went up a weight class. So now he does have huge amounts of strength on top of really good technique and ideas behind how to use his technique. And that like is an interesting concept, how to use your technique, right? You can have the world's best armbar, but if you go for it at the wrong time, it's no good to you. So this comes back into your decision making and like how you adjust yourself around what they're doing, rather than trying to force them into being tired and fighting through their bicep curl. Anyway, Tainan, back to what we're saying, Tainan doesn't try and drag his arm in. Instead, he moves him in. Can you see? And he just plows straight through the arm. That looks like it just broke his elbow backwards, but really his forearms come down this way. And so his like arm is smashed into his body. And he's gone for like a single leg X with an S wrap, which is what I actually said looked like what he was trying to set up before. And so it's like one fluid motion, and then he just goes for it. He just commits. Because like at this level, opportunity isn't as drastic and big as what we teach it to the white belts and blue belts and purple belts, where you drag all the way through and only then can you go. In reality, it looks very much like what just happened, where you just go. And you can see how like he kind of baited it as well. Troy tried to wrench his arm out, and now look at all of this space. Look at all of this space for Tainan to go through and forward. So he gets the single leg, and then I think I missed that, how he got up to his feet again. Let's see. He bounced, and so he used his hand on the floor and his leg stepping around to be able to draw the knee back around and like use the momentum of him going down and then up, sort of thing, and use his hand to push himself up off the floor. This knee comes out, he steps around the corner with this leg, plants it, and then starts coming up for the single leg. And then gets like a under wrap, and then Troy makes a mistake trying to turn the corner, and Tainan just follows him and sits him down. So let's watch that again without me pausing. Yeah, nice. That wasn't Tainan necessarily pulling, like Tainan was pulling the leg, but it wasn't Tainan necessarily pulling that flipped Troy onto his back. Troy tried to sit down and like counter throw somehow, or like turn into him, and this is what allowed Tainan to pull this leg out of the way and then sit Troy down. And then immediately you see that Tainan sprawled out, and then he just goes into the pass. See how he's like already on the sprawl, so he doesn't get caught on this fuck around leg, and then he immediately passes. Very, very good. Very good display of technique. Smashes in. Now he's on a side control. And Troy is framing and bracing. And then Tainan is making good advancements. Just slow advancements. I love how Tainan's controlling that head as well. So he's stopping Troy from being able to like roll in, and you see how flat he's keeping Troy. It's really, really good. And you'll notice that this left hand comes to the shoulder first, which is what you need to control, because that shoulder will go back and down as this shoulder comes up and over. And then he moves on to the head, and he starts to control the shoulders. Let's see how he does it. You see how he's climbing and advancing the guard. And what Troy should be doing here, it's going to be difficult, but like this is an example of bad technique and bad decision making, is that the entire style's changed to try and like bench press the other person off, and he's not doing anything to try and get his shoulders that are flat rotated onto the side. Instead, he's relying on his tensile strength to be able to lift Tainan off and get this knee in, because he's small, right? He's 5'10", 180 pounds, thereabouts. So he's used to being able to just bully people with his strength and his ability to put knees into space that is usually there. But you can see how Tainan is blocking this space down, and he's like dropping this hip a little bit further down. He's pinching this knee in, and he's like rotating the corner as he does this. So not only is he pinching this side down completely, but he's making it incredibly hard for Troy to get on a side, because if he does, this arm is going to either go over this hand here and wrap in front of his face, or he's going to be able to spin around the top, right? That's just what's going to happen. And it comes back to an interesting point that I sort of raise with my students all the time, is that people that are Troy's size are the fucking worst for this. They say to biggins like me, "Oh, don't use your strength, it's not very fair." But then they go ahead and pull shit like this, where they're trying to bench press and then wiggle their knee in so they can use all of the tensile strength available to them. We covered this in the last video, that people their size are really tensilely strong, as like a weight to power ratio is really high. So they use insane amounts of strength, and then they use all of their physical attributes to win, instead of using proper technique, which is get on your side, frame properly, use the bigger muscle groups, work for space on the hip by using your bigger muscle groups to move you, not them. You don't want to move them, you want to move you. And so it comes down to really Tainan understands, as we said before, I need to move me, not the other person. He never tried to move Troy. He always tried to move him. And in every single match he's ever had, the only time he's lost was like to Gomid. Can't remember his first name now. But Gomid was really good at moving him, and Tainan tried to move Gomid. You know, and Gomid was really good at moving himself. Jansen Gomid, was it? Yes. Jansen was really good at moving himself, and Tainan was trying to move Jansen. And so he seems to have learnt from that now, and he's moving himself a lot more. Troy is still in that trap of moving the other person and then using his own physical attributes to his advantage, which is not something you should be focusing on ever. You should be incorporating that into your technique, not relying on it as a crutch. In the same way that you shouldn't rely on strength if you're a biggin, nor should you rely on agility, flexibility, stamina, gas tank, etc. if you're anyone else. You should rely on good technique and then reinforce it with your physical attributes. So that's what we're seeing, and you see Tainan starts going around the top, and then Troy tries to curl in, so he gets a good frame and he starts lifting, and Tainan, I feel like, made a mistake here. He could have settled. I feel like Tainan's made the mistake here. Right? He goes around the top and he lifts his hips rather than keeping them low, and that's what allows the hands to go on and to be able to lift him. And this is what allows the knees to come in, right? But he pummels with his left hand here, the knee out of the way, and then gets control over the head again. So it's a little bit harder for Troy. You see how the knee goes on his belly, and then he was getting set to chase him if Troy started to try and shrimp, which he didn't. And now you can see how tightly Tainan is controlling the hips. And finally Troy gets on his side, but it's not. And then Tainan is committed so far over the top. Looks like he's going to get rolled off, but he's not. He's actually committed perfectly. A lot of people will sit with their chest back here somewhere and then wonder why their opponent can escape with hip escapes and things. Right now he sat directly on top of the other person. And this is what allows him to control much more easily, because every time that Troy would shrimp, Tainan would get dragged along. You see how he's making advancements now. Oh, almost gets to mount there. Almost gets to mount with a little hip switch. So he hip switched in to clear the elbow, hip switched out to clear space for the knee to go across. Very nice movement. And then Troy does like a hip bump and pushes him off the top, and Tainan just keeps control over the shoulders and the head. This wrap on the back of the head is really important. If you don't do that, you should try it in your rolls and see if it makes a difference for you. Now the crossface comes in, and it looks like he was trying to clear this elbow to get his head on the outside of it, so he can clear the space, go to mount, start looking for a head and arm choke, etc. But I don't think he'd get a head and arm choke because of the elbow being on his chest, the forearm being on his chest instead of free. You see how like forward Tainan's committing? And you notice as well that Troy keeps on trying to get this knee in. So he's like bracing it against Tainan, which is what you should be doing. And he's trying to shrimp out and trying to get the knee on the inside. But it's just not working for him. And so Tainan is committing forwards. Hey Evan, how you going? And around the corner. And it's... Sorry, my housemate just came home. He's going forwards and around the corner, and he's not allowing this knee to go backwards, and he's not allowing this space to open up. And you can see. And you see how he like rotated his hips so that his hip did the work, pushing the knee out the way. And so he can close the space down again. And he's keeping Troy flat. And it's very, very difficult now. See how he's riding the hips, and he's got like this deep crossface. And yeah, finally he gets like the head on the inside space, very underneath the arm. Sorry. So he's doing maintenance actions as he's working for opportunity. And Troy makes this mistake. He forgets that this is a threat because he's trying to like use his elbow to flare Tainan's head to the side so he can create that space. Tainan's doing such good work rotating his hips, and you see how far he's attached the other hip, like pulling himself in. And he's like pulling his shoulders in. He's like really, really connected. And then yeah, Troy forgets about this, and Tainan uses the hand to smash the arm out the way. And now that he's got his head underneath the armpit, look at how much space is opened up for him to start looking to climb to mount, especially when he's controlling the hip. And Troy's trying to get that hand back in, but now it's a difficult task, and it's kind of like a matter of time before Tainan finds that space exactly and starts smashing his knee through. Yeah, and then he gets to mount with an underhook and a crossface. Very difficult. Very, very difficult position to play. The last little thing is that little leg weave. So you see how Troy's trying a last-ditch attempt to keep the knee up. Tainan does a good job of riding the hips, and then he uses his outside foot to smash the knee down so he can quickly clear the hook over to the outside in an arc. And he sits to mount with an underhook and a crossface. Then he's hunting for the double unders, Gordon Ryan style. And it's very, very difficult position to play. I wouldn't be surprised if Troy gets smother tapped here, actually. So yeah, you can see how powerful double unders are. When you have control over the shoulders like this, you don't really need to have control over the hips at the base with your legs. So you can use your legs as like power drivers to force your chest lower and tighten this loop smaller and smaller and smaller, because the other person is just not going anywhere. And so it was a very difficult position to play, and you can see how Tainan's using his legs to drive in and clear the double unders, and it looks superficially like there's a lot of space on mount, but there's really nowhere for Troy to go. You know, my students would be able to attest to this fact that it's fucked down there. And you can see how the elbows are coming together, which forces the wrists further through, which exposes the wrists to like like he can get leverage with his biceps on the wrists, which means that arm bars are coming. But like, look how far away from Troy's body his feet are. You know, you don't need to be tightly wrapped with the heels in order to control mount when you have double unders. And I would suggest that it's over. You know, Troy tries to bridge, but it just doesn't work for him. He's trying a hip escape, so like a shuffle shimmy escape, to try and like encourage Tainan up so he can slip backwards and out and maybe get some leg locks. But again, it's not a very good escape, and you shouldn't do it because it doesn't work against people that know what they're doing, i.e. Tainan. It doesn't really work against average people that know what they should be doing, so it's not a very good escape to be going for. And Tainan resets back down just a little bit so he can pressure in again. And it looks to me like he's actually almost going for a smother tap. And it looks very uncomfortable down there for Troy. It's very uncomfortable. And it looks to me like, yeah, he's panicking a bit down there. Probably barely any room to breathe. And Tainan's just taking his time to gas it. And you can see how very nice timing attack by Tainan there. So Troy's been bumping, and Tainan does this really cool thing where he lets go with his right hand. He was gassing Troy out a little bit, and now he's waiting for the timing where Troy bridges so that he can lift himself forwards into the attack. Yeah, so he let Troy do the work for him, lifting him into the attack. And he just like pinches his knee in, heel comes in, and that's a very tight space in there now. Isolating the arm, and then sits down for the armbar, and that's a very, very nice finish. So I really like this, what he did here. Really, really like this. In order to isolate the attacking arm, he just attaches to it with the wrist and then dives underneath, so that there's no real way for the elbow to go except up the forearm and to the outside of the hip, right? There's no real way for it to go. Otherwise it gets attacked in the wrist lock and all the rest of it. So now this inside arm is completely isolated. This outside arm is completely isolated. If Tainan wanted to, he could use his hand to attack the wrist and the shoulder in a Kimura. But I think he really wanted the armbar. And so he's keeping the elbow in. He sits up, and I feel like this is a bit of a mistake, because he could have kept forwards and done all of this. But now he's hunting for that wrist. And so Troy manages to flip him off the top, but the arms are so isolated and it's so tight now, it's not really a defense. So Tainan comes over the top with the leg, locks it up, pinches the knees in, wrenches on the elbow, and Troy taps. And there's not much to be done. Very good sportsmanship from Troy. He goes to help Tainan up. Tainan doesn't see it. Immediately doesn't chuck a tantrum. He just immediately accepts a loss and goes, well done, good win. So, very good fight. Very good fight. Very good technique. I really liked this. I really liked Tainan, what he did when he cooked Troy out and then used his own escape attempt as a method with which to get to the attack. Of course, I don't agree with sitting down and off the person to finish the attack, but I think that Troy just did a good escape and Tainan took the best of the situation. But if this was, say, Gordon, for example, Gordon would be finishing from the top because you don't want to risk losing the control position. But, you know, like, if that's the only criticism you have about a fighter in a match, then that's not bad. It's like, oh, yeah, your submission was only 90% accurate, not 98% accurate. Like, it's pretty, you know, Evan out the back is like, you know, like, how dare you? You know, how dare you win, but not as well as you could have.
Apparently what he was trying for was the video came out where his son, apparently was going to go for a choke, and his son's like, no, I want to see an armbar. He's like, all right.
That's so funny. Yeah, very good match. Tainan's an absolute beast, and he's only 23, so I'm looking forward to seeing how good he actually gets, especially when he gets on the gear, like all of them do. Don't actually do that, guys. It's bad for you. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for so many subscribers. It's really cool. Feel free to leave a comment, so what you liked, what you didn't like, any suggestions and or future matches. Cheers, guys. Take it easy.